Hi guys, so I'm just going to do some mastering stuff with you today. I've touched on this before a little bit, but we're specifically working with our bounced pre-mastered tracks now. I've got two tracks from different genres here. We're going to approach them a little differently, but essentially what you need to be doing is limiting differently depending on if you're bouncing for CD or just for a general mix where you want it nice and punchy. And you could be a bit louder. And then if you're mastering for Spotify, YouTube, things like that, they're mastered to a lower level. So you actually do a separate bounce at a lower level for that format, so you're not pushing your limiter. And, rather than them having to turn it down, just set it to the level that they want, and then your track should sound better on a streaming service, rather than taking the louder one you made and turning it down. So a couple of things to look at. So I've got some different signal chains here. Now, one thing I am using on both is this Ozone Elements plugin, which I'm hoping is still free. It was. Anyway, I told you about it, so it would have been good to get this. If you don't have it, the image is still free, and you can do the other bits just with Logic plugins. But what is useful is it's got a sum to mono button, so you can check your mix in mono. Incidentally, if you want to check your mix in mono and you don't have this plugin, just go to the gain plugin and just turn mono on, and then it will do it. So there is a way you don't have to use the isotope one. It's just, summing to mono is the same. Right, okay, so I've got a rock track here, a band that I recorded. This is the pre-master. And then I've got kind of a sort of a hip-hoppy tune, which is a little different. So look at the rock one first. I'd say this one's a little bit harder to do. There's more going on here. And the stereo width is wider mix, various different things. Anyway, so I'll play a bit of it so you can hear it, just some different sections, and then I'll talk about how I'd approach it, and then we'll do the other one. This shouldn't take too long. Anyways, let's have a listen. Some vocals a little further through. Oh, naughty words, sorry. Okay, you got the idea. And then it has this drop down section at the end, which is a little different dynamically. Okay, so there's different things we're going to have to deal with here. I did the mix, so I'm pretty happy with it. It definitely needs brightening up a little bit, a bit more punch to it. Obviously, I mixed it knowing that I'd do this in the mastering stage. The only thing that is different is this section at the end. Dynamically is a little different. It's not as full as this section. So with my bus compression, I'm actually going to automate a change from this point, which is something a lot of people don't do or think about, is that when you're doing a master, you might actually want to automate some parameters if things change, which is something I guess overlooked a bit. Anyway, so first of all, I was just listening to it with the multimeter on. So I'm just going to turn Ozone on, and all I'm going to do is put it in mono. So you can hear the difference here. The guitars are really wide. When you sum it down to mono, they kind of get lost a little bit, especially when you've got a section with two guitars going heavy together. Like here. Now, when you do the mix, you could have argued that I should have had the guitars panned in a little narrower, or one in the middle so they didn't disappear when mono, but they wanted the guitars quite wide, and that's a client choice. And we did lots of test mixes of these in the masters, and they were happy with them. And I finished these, in 2018, and the guitarist said to me again the other day, he was still really happy with it. It sounds great in loads of different systems, so it's fine. But it is worth checking in mono and making sure that nothing really gets lost. In some other mixes, I've actually had a guitar mic panned central, just so if it's summed down to mono, that's not lost. I think it's just as long as you're aware of it and you check it when you do your videos explaining what you've done. As long as you talk about that and say what's happened, that's fine. But it is important. I mean, in some cases, things completely disappear. So it's not too bad on this, but the guitars are quite faint in mono. I mean, it's mixed for stereo. I've not mixed it for mono because it shouldn't be listened to on one speaker. That's just very simple. But, some people listen to stuff on just a little Bluetooth speaker and it will sound weak. But heavy metal, a lot of it's going to sound weak on a single little speaker anyways. You've got to take this into account. Anyway, so what I've done here is I've got a couple of different things going on here. Now, one of the things I'm doing is mid-side EQ, which is something we haven't talked about before. It's pretty simple. When you're doing mastering EQ, you want to use the linear phase EQ in Logic anyway. The linear phase EQ is designed to work on stereo sources. Now, what I've got here is with the usual EQ, you've got your normal options, but you've got this drop-down bar that says processing. So at the moment, I've got it set to sides only. So these frequencies I'm boosting are only going to happen to the sides, not the middle of the mix, generally because I'm trying to get a little bit more brightness out of those guitars and some of the, things like hi-hats and stuff. So let's pick a section and see what it sounds like. So that's just giving it a little bit more clarity. So I've done that on the side. If I bypass the plugin, you'll get a little blip where the Logic's processing the audio. The linear phase EQs use a lot of CPU compared to the standard channel EQ, so they're a bit more difficult. Put it on side and have a go with the frequencies and see what happens to the width of your mix. And again, because this is the mastering file, if you wanted to bring out a bit of clarity on things like guitars that pan to the sides or overheads or something, synths, I don't know, backing vocals, you could just affect the sides, which is really cool. You wouldn't really need it so much in the mix because you've got the individual elements. You can change the panning, but at this stage you can't do that. So you've got these. So I've got another one just on the mids, which I'm pushing up a little low end for the drums and the snare. So here we go, same section. Weird. It's a strange hit there, but it's not there now. Anyway, so I'm not going crazy here. I'm just doing little bits where I want to control the mid part of the mix with some boosts. I'm also going to have another EQ to add a little bit of just general stereo EQ as well. And then I did have this one because the right guitar was a bit quiet, but I'm not really sure if I need it now. But again, if you only want to do certain things, you can select left or right only as well, which is cool, isn't it? I don't actually think I need that EQ in anymore, but you could have a go with it anyway. So that's mid-side EQ. You can do the whole stereo mix, or you can EQ different parts, which is just really cool. Worth playing around with, worth knowing about as well. Again, a lot of people I don't think know that's a thing in the Logic EQ, which is kind of cool. All right, so at this stage, I'd usually probably add a little bit of compression. Now on this one, I've actually got a multi-band compressor here, the multi-pressor, and this one allows you to compress specific frequency bands in the mix. So again, you can't go back to the mix before. Well, technically you could, but you can't hear because we're with pre-masters. And you can boost those or compress them, turn them down, do whatever you want to these particular frequency bands. So what I've tried to do is get a bit more clarity out the guitars in this frequency range here, and do a bit of compression on the drums just to control them a bit. So yeah. So as soon as I turned that on, I've got a bit more punch out of the kick, which was nice. A little bit more clarity. Subtle, but again, it shouldn't be crazy. If your mix is good, the adjustments shouldn't be, really pretty big. Also, recognize I've turned it down a little bit. So with all of these, gain stage, make sure you're not making you're shaping the sound, not making it louder. That's what the limiter's for. Could argue it's still a little loud. Also think this needs to come down in volume a little bit. So you've got your user controls, threshold, ratio, tap release, all that stuff, and then up here, that's your makeup gain. So I'm going to turn that down a touch. That's pretty cool. Oh, I was also kind of trying to control the bass guitar a little bit on here. Just pull that down a touch too. What's also cool is that you can listen to the bands individually. Which is actually really useful because you can hear if anything weird's going on, if you've got maybe the release set too long and it's creating, accentuated transients and things, useful. Cool, so got a little bit of multi-band compression there. Next one, I use the console EQ. Now all I did with this is I just pushed the drive up, so it's a little bit of harmonic saturation here. Output model punchy. I've turned the volume down again so it doesn't go up too loud. It's nice, just subtly adds a little bit of depth to it. It's cool. Right, so I've got the multi-band compressor going, and then here I've got our normal bus comp, so I just want to control between 1 and 3 dB again, just to control the punch. So let's see what we got here. It's adding a little bit of volume, so let's just pull that down a bit. With this as well, with it on slowish attack, a little bit faster release, maybe even a bit slower. Snares coming out a little bit more, kicks coming out a little bit more. It's just giving the track punch. It's lovely. I've got it on full output, but something that I'll show you on the other track is that you could have another compressor earlier on doing a bit of compression, but actually pull it back to 50% wet, which would be parallel compression on your output fader, which would be quite cool. Anyway, I'm happy with that. That's all good. Next thing, with Ozone, we're just going to make it louder. So equalizer, I'm not using. Imager, you could make it a bit wider if you wanted to. I mean, for me, this mix is actually quite wide already with the guitars, so I don't really think it needs it. But you might want to. You could push it a touch. It's just I already had the guitars with a stereo widener in the pre-mix, so I don't really need to add it here. Sounds fine. As you can see, as it is, if I sum down a mono, my guitars disappear a bit because they're quite wide. So I'm not going to do anything with that, but I'm going to obviously make it louder. So with this, I've set my output ceiling to -2 dB, and -0.2 dB rather. So it's not going to peak any higher than that, so we've got some headroom. Also, this is the point where it depends what your master's going to be. So this one is going to be the main loud master, 24-bit, 48K probably, if it was being sent for vinyl or just for online purchase like Bandcamp, you can have it in full quality. If I was doing a Redbook CD format, I'd have to dither it down to 16-bit, but it could still be the same volume. So using our multimeter here, for this one I'm aiming for around -9 LUFS because it's the loud one. So okay, so there it was around -10, -9 LUFS, which is fine for me. Just depends. Of course, you can do your reference tracks. So for me, it's always going to be Digital Bath by Deftones for this, because this band quite like Deftones anyway, and Digital Bath's just beautiful drum sound. Now, one thing that's worth mentioning, this was done in the 2000s, so it's super loud. So it's going to be louder than my mix, but that's what they were going for at the time. So what I'm going to try and do is set this one, to the similar volume of mine, and then just judge it for tonality and stuff. So the Deftones one's a lot brighter than mine, but the band here asked me, they want it quite dark sounding and raw, sort of, not too bright. So I could add a little bit more brightness to it. So I could have to push up a bit of this 12K here. Incidentally, if you sum this Deftones album to mono, the guitars pretty much disappear. So they have definitely mixed it for stereo and didn't really have mono particularly in mind here, or it just didn't bother them. But I checked it recently out of interest, and yeah, the guitars just kind of disappear because they're quite wide. So, you know, some people obviously not too bothered by that. Obviously, this is one of my favourite sounding albums of all time, and for a lot of people it's the same. Yeah, so with a little bit of high end added in there, I quite like that. I think that sounds pretty tasty. So the other thing I was going to say is here, because it's a bit quieter, there's less going on, I'm going to automate up this compressor threshold. From this section here, we're going to have a bit more threshold on the compressor. So it should here. Yep. Okay, a bit too much. Just a touch. Let's try that. So keep in mind that you can automate plugins as well, just to control your mix as you go through. Then, yeah, this one would be my full one. So PCM, I'm going to run 24-bit 48K for that, full quality. It's what some vinyl places want, or Bandcamp and stuff. Certainly normalize off. Remember that, because I've done all my gain staging here. Just select your file, Command U, and then bounce it. The only other thing, this video is for demonstration, I would probably do a little bit more EQ, maybe just control a few of those low mids. So I might even set this one back to normal stereo and just pull down a few of those low mids there. So sort of around 400 Hertz. Was there any room for the dog? Tell it again, what can we do? We liked living there in the dark. A small down cobweb dead in that room. Yeah, that just cleans it up a bit, and that's nice. Cool. Alright, that's this one. I'll do the other track in a separate video.